The rain had been falling since early morning, turning the streets of downtown into a blur of gray umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Inside the prestigious Grand Horizon Bank, everything looked polished and perfect. Marble floors, glass walls, expensive suits, and employees who spoke in calm, professional voices. But at exactly 9:17 a.m., a tired-looking man named Daniel Carter walked through the revolving doors carrying a worn leather folder in one hand and holding his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, by the other. Daniel was 36, a single father who had learned to hide exhaustion behind a polite smile. His dark coat was slightly damp from the rain. His shoes were old but clean, and his tie had been knotted in a hurry that morning while he prepared Lily for school. He had spent years building businesses quietly and carefully, but he rarely cared about appearances. That morning, however, he had an important reason for visiting the bank. He had recently acquired a controlling interest in Grand Horizon Bank through a private investment company, and by the end of the week, he was scheduled to officially take over as the bank's new chief executive officer. Daniel had deliberately kept his identity private during the transition because he wanted to see how the bank treated ordinary customers and employees before making any major decisions. He had no idea that his first lesson would come from a woman standing behind the reception counter. Her name was Vanessa Reed, a senior customer service officer who had worked at the bank for 5 years. Vanessa was intelligent, ambitious, and extremely conscious of status. She had become accustomed to judging people by their clothing, cars, watches, and titles, and when she saw Daniel walk in with a child beside him, her expression immediately changed. Daniel approached the counter with a friendly smile. "Good morning. I need to speak with someone about a private account and a business transfer." Vanessa looked him up and down before replying. "Do you have an appointment?" "Not exactly," Daniel said, "but I was told someone would be available to assist me." Vanessa sighed and pointed toward the waiting area. "Then you'll have to wait. We're very busy today." Daniel glanced around. There were only 2 customers waiting. "Of course," he said quietly. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, are we going to be late?" Daniel crouched beside her. "We'll be okay, sweetheart. Why don't you sit over there and finish your drawing?" Lily nodded and walked toward a chair, carrying a small pink notebook. Daniel returned to the counter. "I also need to confirm something regarding a corporate account." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Sir, corporate accounts are handled by our business division. You can't just walk in expecting immediate service." "I understand," Daniel replied calmly. "Could you please tell me who I should speak to?" Vanessa folded her arms. "Do you even have an account here?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes." "Then show me your identification." Daniel handed over his ID. Vanessa looked at it, then looked back at him with an expression that suggested she had already made up her mind about him. "Mr. Carter, if you're here about a small personal account, the regular customer desk can help you." Daniel remained patient. "It's not a small personal account." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" "I'd rather discuss that with the appropriate manager." That answer irritated her. "You know, sir, important people usually have appointments." A few customers turned their heads. Daniel noticed Lily looking toward him. He lowered his voice. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I simply need assistance." Vanessa leaned forward. "And I'm telling you that you need to leave until you have an appointment." Daniel blinked. "Leave?" "Yes. You're holding up the counter." Daniel glanced around. "There are no other customers here." Vanessa's face hardened. "Sir, please don't argue with me. This is a professional institution, not a place where people walk in with children and demand special treatment." Lily heard her and looked up from her drawing. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he remained calm. "My daughter isn't causing any problem. She's sitting in a customer area," Vanessa replied sharply. "And frankly, you don't look like someone who belongs in our private banking division." The words hung in the air. Daniel looked at her for several seconds. "You're judging me because of my clothes?" Vanessa shrugged. "I'm judging you based on what I see." Daniel took a slow breath. "That's unfortunate." Vanessa pointed toward the entrance. "Get out. Come back when you have an appointment." Lily stood up immediately, frightened by the raised voices. "Daddy." Daniel walked over and took her hand. "It's okay, sweetheart." As he turned toward the door, a senior security guard named Marcus approached. "Is there a problem?" Vanessa answered before Daniel could speak. "This gentleman refuses to leave." Daniel shook his head. "I'm leaving." Marcus looked uncomfortable. He had seen Daniel arrive earlier that morning in a vehicle that had been dropped off at the rear entrance, but he had no idea who he was. "Sir, Perhaps you should just come back another day. Daniel nodded. Maybe I will. He walked toward the exit with Lily, but before stepping outside, he turned around and looked directly at Vanessa. You should be careful about deciding who belongs in a room before you know who owns it. Vanessa laughed softly. Whatever that means. Daniel said nothing more. He walked into the rain with his daughter. Outside, Lily looked up at him. Daddy, why was that lady mean? Daniel squeezed her hand. Sometimes people make decisions before they know the truth. Were you sad? She asked. Daniel smiled. A little. But I'm more worried about what happens to people who are treated that way every day. Meanwhile, inside the bank, Vanessa returned to her desk feeling victorious. She had no idea that less than 48 hours later, the same man would walk through those doors again, not as a customer, but as her new boss. The next morning, Grand Horizon Bank's executive floor was buzzing with rumors. Employees had been told that a new CEO would arrive soon, but nobody knew exactly who he was. The previous CEO had resigned unexpectedly after a major shareholder group sold its stake. Vanessa was chatting with two coworkers when the head of human resources suddenly appeared. Everyone, please prepare for an important announcement at 10 o'clock. Vanessa smiled. Do we know who the new CEO is? Not yet, the HR director replied. At 10 exactly, the conference room doors opened. Senior executives stood as Daniel Carter walked in wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit. His hair was neatly styled, his expression calm, and beside him was the bank's chairman. Vanessa was not in the conference room, but she was standing near the hallway when she saw him. At first, she didn't recognize him. Then Daniel looked in her direction. Their eyes met. Vanessa's face went completely pale. The folder in her hands slipped slightly. No, she whispered. The chairman stepped forward. Everyone, I'd like to introduce our new chief executive officer, Mr. Daniel Carter. Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. The same man she had ordered to get out was now the man who could determine her future at the bank. Daniel did not embarrass her publicly. He simply walked past her and entered the executive conference room. The announcement spread through the building within minutes. Employees whispered about the young CEO who had acquired control of the bank, but Vanessa could hear only one sentence in her head. You should be careful about deciding who belongs in a room before you know who owns it. She spent the next hour terrified. She expected Daniel to fire her immediately, but instead he called for a company-wide meeting. Employees gathered in the main auditorium. Daniel stepped onto the stage and looked at the crowd. I want to begin by saying something simple, he said. A bank is not defined by marble floors, expensive offices, or the size of its accounts. It is defined by how it treats people. Vanessa stood near the back, her face burning. Daniel continued. Yesterday, I entered this building as an ordinary customer. I was tired. I was carrying a folder. I had my daughter with me. I was judged by my appearance and told to leave. A murmur moved through the room. Vanessa lowered her head. I could have revealed who I was, Daniel said. I could have shown documents proving my position. But I chose not to, because I wanted to see how someone without obvious status would be treated. He paused. What happened yesterday was unacceptable. Everyone remained silent. Then Daniel added, but this is not about revenge. Vanessa looked up. Daniel's eyes met hers. It is about accountability. After the meeting, Vanessa was called into his office. She entered nervously. Daniel gestured toward a chair. Sit down. Vanessa Saturday, Mr. Carter, I'm sorry. Daniel remained silent. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way, she continued. I made assumptions. I was wrong. Daniel nodded. You were wrong, but you're not the only person responsible for the culture that allowed you to behave that way. Vanessa looked confused. What do you mean? I mean that this bank has trained people to believe wealthy customers deserve respect, while everyone else must prove they deserve it. That changes today. Vanessa swallowed. Are you firing me? Daniel leaned back. No, she looked surprised. Then what happens? You're going to keep your position for now, but you'll take part in a new customer service leadership program. You'll also spend one day each month working directly with community customers who have never used private banking services. Vanessa nodded slowly. I understand. Daniel stood and walked to the window. I want you to learn something I learned years ago. Vanessa waited. My father once lost everything, Daniel said. We had almost nothing. People treated us differently because they thought we had become worthless. My father taught me never to confuse someone's circumstances with their character. Vanessa's eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. Daniel turned toward her. I believe you are. Weeks passed. Vanessa changed gradually. She became more patient with customers and started helping junior employees instead of competing with them. One afternoon, she noticed a nervous elderly man standing at the counter holding a stack of papers. He looked confused and embarrassed. Instead of brushing him aside, Vanessa smiled. Sir, please take your time. I'll help you. The man looked relieved. Thank you. Across the lobby, Daniel watched quietly. Lily was with him that day, drawing pictures in a chair near the entrance. Vanessa saw her and smiled. After assisting the elderly customer, she walked over. Hi, Lily. Lily looked up. Hi. Vanessa crouched beside her. I'm sorry I was mean to you and your daddy. Lily studied her face. Are you still mean? Vanessa smiled. I'm trying not to be. Lily nodded seriously. Then you can be my friend. Vanessa laughed softly, almost crying. Daniel watched the moment with a quiet smile. Later that evening, Vanessa approached Daniel before he left. Mr. Carter? Yes. Thank you for not firing me. Daniel smiled. I didn't save your job. You did. You chose to change. Vanessa nodded. I learned something. What? A person's worth isn't written on their clothes, car, or bank balance. Daniel smiled. Exactly. She hesitated. And there's one more thing. What's that? You were right. I should be careful about deciding who belongs in a room. Daniel laughed. And what did you learn about that? Vanessa smiled. Sometimes the quietest person in the room owns the building. They both laughed. Daniel took Lily's hand and headed toward the exit. Before leaving, he looked back at the busy lobby. The marble floors were still shining, the glass doors were still spotless, and the bank was still one of the most prestigious institutions in the city. But something had changed. The people inside had begun to understand that respect was not something reserved for the rich, the powerful, or the perfectly dressed. It was something every person deserved. And Vanessa, who had once shouted "Get out" at a tired single father, became one of the strongest advocates for that principle. Daniel never forgot what happened that rainy morning, but he also never used his power to destroy someone who had made a mistake and genuinely changed. Instead, he turned an embarrassing moment into a lesson that transformed the entire bank. Years later, whenever new employees joined Grand Horizon Bank, they were taught a simple rule. Never judge a customer by what you see at the door. And beneath that rule was a story about a single father, a little girl, a bank worker, and one unforgettable sentence that changed everything. Because sometimes the person you humiliate today is the very person who decides your tomorrow.